This COVID crisis had a devastating impact on the economy. The US spent the last year and a half recovering from its devastating consequences. As the economy is on the mend, an unequal or K-shaped recovery appears apparent. During the pandemic, 651 billionaires have accrued more than $1 trillion in additional wealth. That's enough to send every American a $3,000 check. Such wealth, however, has not trickled down to the 26.1 million US workers who in November last year were still directly impacted from the recession, including unemployment and drops in pay. In comparison, the highest paid workers who earn more than $60,000 a year have fully regained their jobs and wages. More than 3 million jobs in the leisure and hospitality sector, such as restaurants and hotels, have yet to return. These jobs account for over a third of the 8.4 million jobs yet to be regained. When comparing the restaurant, bar, travel and hospitality sector to industries such as technology and some segments of retail, it is clear to see that a K-shaped recovery is currently occurring. This chart clearly shows that the hospitality sector is not recovering, while technology and some segments of retail have recovered and soared to new heights. The hospitality sector is generally made up of minorities and those without college degrees, meaning that these groups have continued to struggle financially. After last year's stock market crash, stocks have recovered and soared higher. For instance, the S&P 500 stock index is roughly up 46% over the last year. The stock market, where historically 80% of wealth has been owned by the top 10% of households. This dynamic is very similar between wealth and education levels. Americans with a college degree own 83% of stocks according to the Fed. And it is estimated that only 12% of the most low-income Americans own stocks. During the holiday period last year, we saw that millions were still severely financially impacted by the crisis. Haunting images of thousands of cars lined up at food banks reminded America that the bottom half has clearly not recovered. It is estimated that during the Christmas period, 1 in 8 Americans reported that they sometimes or often didn't have enough food to eat in the past week. That number climbed to more than 1 in 6 people in households with children. Many southern states were the hardest hit, with Houston being the city impacted the most. Richer Americans typically take a financial hit via their wealth holdings, such as stocks and home prices. For example, rather than lost job income during recessions, as the stock market quickly recovered any losses last year, home prices went soaring to new all-time highs. Home prices were up almost 15% in November from the year prior. These divergences in experiences between different people groups has had many economists identifying this as a K-shaped recovery. But that unequal economic pain wasn't evident in the early months of the recession. Congress quickly passed the CARES Act, a $2.2 trillion relief package, giving households income with extra unemployment benefits and stimulus checks. Such injection of cash helped 5 million Americans out of poverty by June 2020. However, when the stimulus ended, nearly 8 million people fell back into poverty. Poverty grew more and more over the months that followed. A senior economist at the Center of American Progress said, "This may not have been the most unequal recession, but it was clearly the most unequal recovery." A handful of billionaires and corporations have seen their wealth surge to record highs, in part as a result of their monopoly status and opportunism during the pandemic. Walmart, Target, and Amazon benefited from their monopoly positions in the economy, with the retailers considered essential while their retail competitors were completely shut down. As of the middle of November 2020, the combined wealth of 647 US billionaires increased by almost 960 billion since March that year. That's an increase of nearly 1 trillion in less than a year. While those who own these retailers saw their wealth soar, there was concern that those who worked for these companies were left exposed. For example, the Walton family who own Walmart have seen their combined personal wealth increase by over 48 billion during the pandemic. In 2018, Walmart CEO Doug McMillon made 1,118 times the pay of Walmart's median worker. Yet, Walmart refused to pay hazard pay to its workers. Likewise, the wealth of Amazon's Jeff Bezos has increased by 62% since mid-March, totaling $188 billion as of November 17, 2020. 10 billionaire owners who own 7 major retailers across the US have a combined wealth of $433 billion. Since March 18, 2020, their combined personal wealth has increased $127.5 billion, an increase of 42%. Likewise, 13 billionaires in the world saw their wealth increase over 500%. While billionaires are getting richer, a year on after the initial impact of COVID, many Americans are still experiencing economic hardship. They're still feeling the financial impact of the loss of a job or income within their household. Polls show that about half of Americans say they have experienced at least one form of household income loss during the pandemic, including 25% who have experienced a household layoff and 31% who say someone in their household was scheduled for fewer hours. Overall, 44% say their household experienced income loss from COVID that is still having an impact on their finances today. To counter the great divide in wealth inequality, President Joe Biden proposes to raise the top income tax rate to 39.6%. His plan, which cites loopholes that reward wealth over work, will almost double the rate on capital gains for those making more than $1 million, and eliminate a method by using private equity investors to lower their bills. Biden also proposes to raise the charge on corporate profits to 28%, reversing half of Donald Trump's 2017 tax cut. Historically, America has always seen a significant wealth divide. In 2019, even before the pandemic, the top 10% owned 76% of the country's wealth, equaling 12.9 million families. The next 40% owned 22% of the wealth, 51.5 million families. And finally, the bottom 50% own just 1% of the wealth, equaling 64.3 million families. Likewise, since the early 1990s, families which had family members who were more educated have seen their net worth significantly increase. The least educated families were the only group to see their median income decrease between 2016 to 2019. Wealth inequality is a huge issue in America. As COVID stopped the global economy, the recovery saw the top 1% gain their wealth back immediately and soar to new heights, all while millions still struggle with unemployment and lower wages. America is experiencing a K-shaped recovery, which will continue into the near future.